I'd like to thank the chairman and ranking member. Gentlemen, thanks for all the good work you're doing to protect our country. It's really important. And I just want to echo the sentiments of all my colleagues who've asked good questions and praised you for the hard work you do. But I want to get your views on the other side of the problem, which is doing such a good job that good people earning money in, say, my district in Minnesota have a tough time getting it to their good family members in Somalia. It's not just a problem that my constituents come to me about. It's also a national security angle here too, because it's not good for Somalia, which relies on 40% of its gross domestic product for foreign remittances, to lose that and then to be subject to the truly bad people. I think it's important for me to point out that the people who recruit my constituents or try to, or send money to al-Shabaab with money that they try to raise, are the true enemies of the Somali people and my constituents. And I thank you for trying to stop them. But how do we thread the needle such that we stop the bad money, which you guys are like really good at doing, but allow the people who are legitimately just trying to make sure school fees and meals and all that that money's getting through, which I think you would agree is the overwhelming majority. Could y'all speak to this?
Congressman, this is a critical point, something I mentioned in my testimony, I mentioned in my book, that the strategies of financial exclusion, which is really what we've been perfecting over the last 13 years, could reach a tipping point where you begin to harm the very important policies of financial inclusion. And to your point, that begins to do several things. One, it's denying access to the financial system to those who need it and who we want to have access to it. That's everything from charities to money remitters to those in the financial system trying to get money abroad. And that's been an effect of the de-risking that the financial community has been engaged in. Banks are saying, look, it's not worth our time or the risk to engage in Somali remittances, for example. We don't know if al-Shabaab, pirates, or some other criminals are going to be on the back end of that receiving money. And so I think there's a range of things that need to be done. First and foremost, I think with the industries involved, both the banks and the money remitters, organizations like the Habshil, which is the big Somali remitter, which is dealing with this issue not just in the U.S., as you know, Congressman, but also in the U.K. acutely with the Somali British community. They need to come up with ways of understanding who their customers are on the back end, because without that, there is that last mile of assurance. There isn't going to be many legitimate financial institutions that are willing to stick their neck out to say, we want to do business with these folks without knowing who we're doing business with. And so I think that's first and foremost. Second, we need to be creative with what governments can do in terms of safe harbors or safe corridors. The UK has been experimenting. I know you've been working with the Treasury and the White House on this, and I think that's important. I think we need to be creative. Third is we need to be better with our intelligence. To Seth's point, we actually need to understand where these money flows are going, because, as you say, much of it is going for good causes, to feed families. Some of these charities are doing good things, and we don't want to shut that out of the system, in part because that provides information and intelligence, in part because it's good for the global economy, and in part because you do want compliance and legitimate actors in these spaces. You don't want these spaces absented and filled by nefarious actors or those who aren't really going to care about what the U.S. Congress or what the U.S. Treasury says. And so we're really at an interesting moment, because it's not just what your constituents are dealing with, sir, but it's really what the financial community is dealing with in terms of de-risking, because the banks feel at risk and other sectors need to do their
Let me dive back in with my minute here. I just want to point out that as I talk to OCC, Treasury, FinCEN, the whole gang, I think that, we had one member of Congress who asked them all, we had a meeting with all of them, and the question was asked, who's in charge? And they all said, we all got a piece of it. I think that for the financial service sector, it would help a lot if we could say, you can do this, you cannot do this, and try to get on the same page with that. Two, look, the United States spends a lot of money on AMISOM, which is the international security force in Somalia. What if we spent some money to help stand up a Somali central bank that met international AML standards? I wonder, I don't have any time left, but I wonder if you could try to respond to that. It seems like a dollar well spent to me.
I think that a central bank in Somalia would still have to deal with some of those last mile risks that we're talking about. And I think the challenge here, and I agree with you, there needs to be creativity, there needs to be more clarity. I think the real challenge when you're talking about terrorist financing writ large and conflict zones is there is always going to be ambiguity. And the question then is, how do you manage the risk around money flows in that ambiguous space? And I think you see it in spades in Somalia, you see it obviously in Syria, you see it around the world, where you actually do want funds to go in for proper and good purposes, but you've got to figure out a way that those dollars or pounds aren't getting into the wrong hands.
Gentleman from